Joining us right now, a lot of stuff. Sam's probably been up. I'm going to guess right now. Let's see. It's 11:05, 11:06 in Orlando. I'm going to guess Sam's been up a couple hours. Probably worked out, jogged along the beach, got himself a nice not jogged along the beach, jogged along the hotel. He can't leave. Got himself a nice breakfast from probably the 17 food things he's got in his fridge because they keep piling it up. And this is like mid-afternoon for this guy. We appreciate it. From The Athletic, Sam Amick. Good morning, Sam.
I'm about to hang up on you right now.
Why ever would you do that? All I did was compliment you, Sam.
That's what the kids call trolling right there.
Good morning.
As your listeners don't know, I was griping to Dave over text message last night that listen, I told my wife the other day, other than certainly missing the family a great deal, I've enjoyed the bubble a lot lately. Professionally, it's the games are fun, the access is pretty good, but the lifestyle stuff and the lack of sleep in the late nights is just brutal. They these 9 p.m., 8:30 p.m. starts mean that we. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Toothpaste being delivered to the hotel room here.
What was delivered?
A little bit of toothpaste. I was running low on toothpaste.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry. I get toothpaste. Okay.
Crest or Colgate?
Yeah, well, what is the brand, Sam?
I mean, are we just giving away advertising?
I mean,
yeah.
Well, I don't think Colgate's a huge sponsor, so.
It was Colgate.
Okay.
So, sleep is just brutal, man. Because we don't have deadlines at our place when I write at night. You try to put something worth reading together. And it's like last night I was pretty happy that I hit send at 2:45 a.m. Like that was okay. But there's been some 4 a.m. nights. And so trying to, manage that part of it. But no leisurely mornings for me.
No. Well, we appreciate it. There's nothing I could do. 8:05 is the latest I can go. I thought it might help because you're 3 hours ahead, but you're bubbling. And let's go right in there before we get to specifics. The bubble. Listen, COVID sucks. Being away from your family sucks. You mentioned that. So all the things that suck from a macro point of view, from a micro point of view, is this kind of like a dream come true for people in the media covering the NBA because everything is so close. You have such access. You don't have to fly to different cities. And the entire league, at least that's still left, the entire league is in one place. Is that a uniquely awesome thing for you guys?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I'm appreciating it more and more the longer I'm here. And as much as it's weird, you have this mixed emotion thing because I looked at the calendar yesterday and I was like, oh, interesting. We're, for me and my part, we're officially over a month. That's longer than I'll typically leave. And then you also look the other direction and kind of go, man, it's kind of flying by and it's going to be over before you know it. And the access, yesterday's a good example. The Heat had, 2 days ago, Heat had practice and my dear friend Jeff Zogit of USA Today had a one-on-one kind of walk and talk with Goran Dragic where they left practice. And I was kind of hanging out waiting for Goran. Waiting for Jeff. So while they talk, I'm lingering about 10 feet away from my buddy. But Goran's buddy, Jimmy Butler, is waiting for his buddy. And next thing you know, those types of casual things are happening all the time where, and this is not an interview, but I get to sit there and BS with Jimmy for 10 minutes while Goran talks to Jeff. And that interview, I don't know if you saw the other day with Marcus Smart, was very similar, where everything is just fairly casual. There are some rules. The NBA, they want one-on-one interviews to go through the team, which sounds super controlling, but truthfully, to their credit, they're saying yes to most things. And then the games themselves, I think I've said this on the show before, the press seating is just spectacular. I've now taken to sitting baseline where last time I was FaceTiming with my oldest son, and before the game I said, hey buddy, let's count the steps from press row to the court, and I got out of my chair and it was 5 steps away.
Wow.
And so all those things have definitely been highlights.
Sam Amick from The Athletic joining us this morning. Sam, we are now a week removed from the Kings naming Monty McNair as their new GM. Curious, after a week, what's kind of been the talk around your colleagues and if you've talked to anybody around the league about, their thoughts on the Kings' hire of McNair?
Yeah, I mean, Monty's got a really good reputation. So, a lot of thumbs up. And then the league being the league, you're going to have, for one, there's always people wishing that either they got the job or somebody who they're tied to got the job. So, you've got that crowd as well. And the fact that it is, and Monty addressed this yesterday, on the one hand, he has a lot of experience, 13 years with the Rockets and doing some good work there. But, it's a jump for sure for him. So you have some people who thought that they might have gone for somebody who had been a GM before. You have the inevitable kind of reality of discussion about the Joe Dumars stuff that we've talked about and, how did that impact things and what might have been, yada, yada, yada. But the part, I thought Monty presented himself well yesterday with the media. I was on that Zoom call. Dave, I heard you kind of allude to the fact that, there was some meat on that bone in terms of his answers. It wasn't all platitudes and cliches. So, he's got to get to work. And the two probably main takeaways for me out of his press conference were his willingness publicly to reiterate what we already knew, which is that Joe Dumars would be a good resource for him, but he made it very clear that, he has his own lane and is not, kind of beholden to Joe in terms of their structure. And then the Luke Walton factor, and I do think that was a Vivek-driven element of the search, which is that for at least next season, they seem to be invested in Luke and him being the coach.
Sam Amick with us. Sam, before we get to the X's and O's and the two series remaining, I want to ask you kind of a serious question out of left field, but I only do that because I know you can answer it. And it's, again, I'm just asking for your opinion. I read an article this morning, and I'm sorry, I forget where it was from, and that's irresponsible of me. But it was somebody that did a deep dive on political donations from NBA governors, and it outlined, for example, Steve Ballmer, over $7 million to Democratic causes, but it really focused on, for example, the DeVos family, Gail Benson, and a few others that had donated to Republican causes. Now, I hear people getting triggered all over the place, and I'm not getting into the right or wrong. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to get you to do that, Sam. But the more people do deep dives into NBA governors and their political donations and preferences, and the more that may not exactly mesh with the messaging from players in the NBA on the court, on the jerseys, and in society, do you see in the future this becoming more of a vocal issue from players to governors? Or do you think we get through this? And much like the past, that was almost like the question you don't ask and you don't answer. Do you see that as a story of the future coming to us?
I do, yeah. In fact, this topic came up yesterday. And I know, Dave, we always enjoy talking media stuff. And this is, whether it's The Athletic or my old place, USA Today, you have this thing happening right now where you have the journalists who feel like certain topics are pretty relevant. The one you mentioned, I think, is. But then you have the inevitable debate, analysis internally of what's the reader reaction going to be. And so at our place, listen, when we write about that type of stuff, the comment section is flooded with, I'm unsubscribing. Sure. You know what I mean? Or the page views at a different company will be down. And I think we got to cut through that because I think the answer is yes. It's a story because, the players are the ones setting the tone here. If they're going to create an environment where they not only want to be heard, but they want to be taken seriously, then I think they need to ultimately, I think it kind of starts with the media, all right, let's pull the curtain back. And like you said, it's not a political value judgment in terms of the reporting, but let's have things be plain as day and have more revelation on the owners and their dealings in the political sector. Then get the players' thoughts on it. Now, if they say, then that's kind of the type of thing that you just compartmentalize, then so be it. But I feel like the main point that you're hitting on is that there is still this not total hollowness, but there's a hollowness to some of the messaging, because you want these guys to turn around and look at the owners and say, we need to talk. And they are doing that. They are having those kinds of meetings, but I'm uncomfortable personally with how many of these owners, Tillman Fertitta in Houston wants to come out and say, I'm behind our players, and, social justice is great. And it's like, Tillman, you got your hands in some other things here.
Right.
So, and, not to make him the poster boy,
sure.
But, I think that's real. The DeVos family for sure. And as the husband of a teacher, every time I hear the DeVos name, it's cringe a little bit. But it is, but that's the change the players are trying to spark, is that their entire environment is becoming more and more player-driven. And that means that even though the owners might still be the ones cutting the bigger checks, that they're going to have to address some of these things.
It's an unfortunate position for a reporter to be in, a real reporter, a real journalist, because as you said, there's a financial aspect as we pulled back the curtain, the subscriptions at The Athletic, page views at any other place, comments being filled with triggering and you're doing this thing and you're advocating this, when in fact, to your point, Sam, the lack of it being congruent, the messaging and then the finances, it seems it's not difficult to make that jump between, hey, here's a list of what everybody donates to. That means that's where their philosophies lie, and that's, again, not congruent with the messaging being sent out. Politics and sports, I get it, separate them, but is it that tough to make a leap, if we're being silly here, that it may turn out to be a situation where players may start not wanting to play for teams that are governed by, that is a very big direct effect on the X's and O's and on-court play, so you're almost forced to cover it whether you want to or not.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with that, because, again, the part of me that cares about, the players in their communities that are hurting during this brutal time is kind of wants for them to be intellectually honest about it. I think that would be great. And, part of me thinks it should. And by the way, just to be fair, again, it's got to cut both ways. I mean, if you're a Spencer Hawes type from the old days and you decide that you only want to play for somebody who's on the right,
sure,
that's your prerogative,
sure.
So, yeah, that stuff, I do wonder going forward if that becomes, I'm not trying to be glib, but, part of the 2021 free agency pitch, hey, by the way, did you know that Mark Lasry is a significant member of the Democratic Party?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
Right.
So it is, I think, that stuff is coming to bear. And then for me on the media side, I think where I land is I want to continue trying to honor, the way, these guys are trying to tell their story. Because last night was an interesting one, Dave. There was, a lot of discussion, predictably, about the Breonna Taylor decision out here in the bubble. And I ultimately didn't write about it last night. And honestly, I talked to a good friend and colleague, Mark Spears from the Undefeated. We were sitting together on press row last night and discussing coverage. And he was asking a lot of players about how their feelings, a lot of disappointment with the fact that, just the one charge to the one officer and really nothing to do with Breonna herself. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I didn't write about it because the players addressed it, but it was nothing close to the upswelling of emotion and an action that took place a month ago when they brought the season to another stop. And so I kind of took their cues, which is to say, for that night, it was a story, it was being hit on in other areas, but I ended up writing about basketball. But, you know my stuff well enough,
yep.
More than comfortable getting off the court and writing about the life stuff. So I'll keep trying to hit the right marks there, but all of this stuff is certainly complicated to get
Which
to.
I'll point out, to your credit, can cost you money. And you probably don't want that shared, but I don't care, because I think it's important. Regardless of the side you're on, there's a direct connection in many cases, not just for you, but for other journalists, directly to your pocketbooks. And when we read this stuff, I think there needs to be somewhat of an understanding. I do personally amongst fans, amongst readers, that I'm not saying you're Norma Ray or anything, but you're taking chances, you're taking risks, and you're aware of those risks when you go in. And I appreciate the morality and ethics involved with that.
I appreciate it, and I don't want to. It's not that simple. It's not. It's more. Can it cost you? And I got to praise the Athletic because we have a very diverse staff that has a really robust internal conversation about coverage. And to our leadership's credit, in fact, we've made some hires at the top recently, kind of along these lines to add, even more timely and relevant voices. There is no messaging of, hey, we might lose subscribers, stay away from this. There's none of that. Obviously one of my good friends and amazing writers, Marcus Thompson, is kind of leading the way with a lot of the coverage that we've had there, but we had some great stuff. Michael Lee out in the East Coast has been killing it. But that's where I come in, because it's like, again, this is not a right-left thing. We got to have white voices too. We got, that are representing, every part of every community. So, this is, it's more just media wide. It's the discussion about representing the news and being journalists and the reality of what's happening in the world right now versus let's keep pumping out the cotton candy and popcorn just because that's what the basketball fans might want.
Sam Amick joining us. Sam, before we let you go, I did want to touch on one basketball-related item.
Oh, all right.
Sorry.
How dare you, Jay?
Yeah, jeez.
The Bulls came to terms with Billy Donovan last week. While I think that's a great hire for the Bulls, I was a little surprised to see him commit to Chicago so quickly when, in my mind, there's more intriguing jobs out there like Indiana and New Orleans. Were you surprised to see him commit to the Bulls that quickly with those jobs out there?
Yeah, I was. I haven't talked to Billy, so I don't know his rationale. I mean, I'm assuming the money was really good. It is generally a team that is seen right now as being on the upswing. Good young core and new GM and Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley in the front office that, have good reputations. So I don't know. I think part of it with Billy, he's a very strong family man, and I'm imagining that part of this was his wife's feeling on that part of the country. And, there were some rumblings that while they really, really, really enjoyed their time with the Thunder organization that, that maybe she wasn't, kind of living in that part of the world. So, I don't know. I think Philly was another one that he would have had a good crack at, but it felt like the Bulls essentially, and this happens in coaching situations where you might have a list of 15 guys or women on the list, and then you see a guy like Billy Donovan who, whose profile is greater and who's coming off a really good coaching job with last season's Thunder, and you just kind of say, we got to just nab that guy. And it felt like that's what they did. So, a little surprised, but I think it was a good hire.
Sam Amick of The Athletic. Deals going on right now at theathletic.com. $1 a month, which I've always said kind of ticks me off because I pay more than that. But I also feel like I'm kind of getting a steal.
Don't be that guy, Dave. Don't be that guy.
Just saying, but it's fun.
Don't worry about another man's money. You stay in your lane, and we're going to keep taking your money. Something like that.
The checks will cash. Sam Amick, Jason Jones, our good friend Matt Barrow, so many more, not just local but national. And really, one of the things I appreciate, other than the fantastic journalism that happens there, is the fact that it's just laid out so well. It's easily searchable, whether by author, by team, or whatever. It is the best sports-related money I spend, and I invite you to do the same exact thing for our good friend Sam Amick, who is away from his family for months in order to selflessly cover basketball for you and I. Sam, appreciate you. Sorry to get you in the middle of your afternoon after you've been up for hours, but appreciate you taking time.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Take care. It's Sam Amick.
It's the Carmichael Dave Show on Sports 1140 KHTK.